Hey, it's Hunt. You found Hunt on Saints. We're talking black and gold football. Do us a favor, hit the like button, share your comments below, and hit that subscription button so you can get all of our content. Enjoy. There was a little news today as the Saints hired Rick Dennison to be their running game coordinator. Dennison been with the Vikings since 2019. I would presume his paths crossed with Clint Kubiak there. So your thoughts when you heard that name to that position?
Yeah, I think it's been kind of an interesting assemblage of this coaching staff for Clint Kubiak. I think he's got a nice mix of experienced coaches like Dennison, he was a part of those Broncos staffs in the '90s that won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Um, Mix of that with some kind of young up and comers. Derek Kelly, the running backs coach, or I'm sorry, not Derek Kelly, Derek Foster. He's 3 years of NFL experience. The quarterbacks coach. Andrew Janako is 36 years old, just like Clint Kubiak. But then you talk about Dennison, who's been in the league forever. John Benton, who I've reported they haven't officially hired him yet, but that's in the works. He's got like 20 some years of NFL coaching experience. So look, they're going to have some new ideas. They're probably going to incorporate some of this 49ers offense, which is a more modern version of what they have been running for a long time. But I think it's smart of Kubiak to get some guys who have some skins on the wall. And I kind of like the way the staff is coming together.
Saints last year, second to last in the NFL in yards per carry on the ground. It was just a bad effort running the football. What can be done to help remedy that?
Well, I think two things. I don't think the rushing numbers last year were indicative of who the players were in the building. And I'm talking specifically the running backs. I think if you would have plugged Alvin Kamara into the Miami Dolphins scheme and their team, he would have probably averaged 5+ yards per carry. I think the same thing goes for Jamal Williams and Kendra Miller. They're better than what we saw last year. I think their offensive line play was not nearly good enough, and I don't think the scheme was good enough. So I think they have made the improvement in the scheme. We'll see what they exactly run, but 49ers rushing attack has been one of the best in the NFL for a long time. Obviously Clint Kubiak, he's heavily influenced by his father, who really kind of modernized and revolutionized the NFL rushing attacks across the league. We're talking about a couple of really experienced offensive line coaches. So I think that's going to take a jump next year, no matter who's running the ball. I think it's really not saying much, though. They've got a long way to go. So even a little bit is going to be a big improvement. I think it's going to help everything else in this offense.
You mentioned no matter who's running the ball, who do you think will be running the ball?
A really good question.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like for certain that Alvin Kamara will be back next year. I certainly expect it as of right now, but it wouldn't be a surprise if they moved on from him. And I think if they do that, it's going to be a very unpopular move because of the fact that he's a running back that's approaching 30 years old, and he has not been hugely productive the last couple of years, and he's got a big contract. Those players are hard to move. If they do, for instance, trade him, which is really the most likely outcome if we're talking about him not being on the team, the return is probably not going to be great. So that's a long-winded way of saying I don't know. I do think that Kendra Miller will feature heavily in the rushing attack next year, but his lone year in the NFL, he battled injury problems. I mean, you can't just go into a season with one guy as your guy. Like, you have to have a couple options there.
How likely is it that Andrus Peat is the left tackle on this team next year?
I'm going to go like 50-50 on that. I think it would benefit the Saints to bring him back just in terms of his contract. If they let him walk, you're talking about like a 13-point-something million dead cap hit next year. But that's obviously, it takes kind of two sides to go there. Andrus Peat's going to want to have to come back. If he wants to test the market, there's really little they can do about that. I don't know exactly what kind of market there is for him out there. But I do think that it would benefit the Saints to at least approach that and give them the opportunity either play Andres Pete or let Trevor Penning develop, under some kind of new eyes with the offensive line coaching staff.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, I don't feel great about it,
Yeah.
right? I think you obviously went into last season really hoping that Penning's potential would really shine through. We didn't really see much at all of him in his rookie season. So you just kind of had to go off the measurables and the intangibles that you thought were there, but there were obviously some big technical deficiencies that he had. So look, I think that this is a really important offseason for him. It's really his first offseason in an NFL program. We've seen players take a big jump when they get this. I think it happened with Cesar Ruiz. But it's the first time where he doesn't have to rehab, he doesn't have to train for the combine and all that other stuff. He can just focus on the technical aspects of the game. So I think it's certainly possible that with a new coaching staff, we'll see a good, dependable version of Trevor Penning. But until you actually see that, you don't know it's going to be there, because he really struggled last year to the point where they didn't even want to put him in the game. So I don't think if you're the Saints, you can just go into the season being yeah, Penning's our guy, we're going to count on him. You just can't. It's a situation they cannot be in this year.
I can pretty simply explain why Trevor Penning didn't play very well. Well, he's never played well in the NFL. I can explain why Ryan Ramczyk didn't play very well. He's been hurt for a couple years. I have a little bit more trouble with the Cesar Ruiz performance this year. What did you make of it?
I thought it was fine. It definitely wasn't up to the level that he played at in 22, when I think he made a pretty big leap. But I don't think he was as bad as his rookie season. That's not exactly what you want to hear either, right? You just signed him to a big extension, where he's probably I think top 6 or 7 guard in terms of salary. You want him playing at or near a Pro Bowl level. But again, I think you can look at this entire offensive line, even a guy like Eric McCoy, who I think is a very good player, who just was named to the Pro Bowl as an alternate. I think he took a step back this year, and I think if you look at just the play kind of across the board, it just wasn't good enough, and that's why we're seeing Doug Marrone not on the team anymore. I think the talent is clearly there with that unit. There's big questions about Ramczyk and big questions about Penning, but I think those 2 young guys in McCoy and Ruiz who he had blocked up, and I think James Hurst played solid. There's stuff there to work with. If you've got good offensive line coaches who can maximize that talent, I think you feel okay about it, but you don't feel 100% confident. And I think they're going to have to address it personnel-wise this offseason. They're going to have to give themselves some option there.
When does this salary cap shakedown start traditionally in New Orleans, and what are the first couple of steps there so that they can move forward?
I mean, I'm anticipating some moves to start happening very soon here. I mean, we're less than a month out from the start of the league year. They've still got $80+ million to clear just to be compliant with the salary cap, let alone giving themselves enough space to make a move or two. So I would fully anticipate that within the next several days, next week, we'll start seeing them news trickle out where the Saints restructure X and the Saints restructure Y and save themselves $15 million against the cap. As far as the other stuff with trades and things like that, I think it's going to take a little bit longer to materialize if indeed it does. But they've got to get started on this. And I'm sure they have a plan, with all the guys they want to restructure, and they don't really have to go to the guys. They have it just baked into their contracts where they can kind of do it at will. So they probably have a list of guys they're ready to do it with. It's just kind of a matter of actually starting it now.
This is a big question, probably not the best one to finish on, but optimism reigns supreme in August. We know that, and there was very little of that in December and into January with the New Orleans Saints. Where do you think that's going to come from in the next 6-8 months? As far as they add a couple of really nice pieces in free agency, it's just because they've got a new offensive coordinator. What change from Christmas to August is going to create some of that optimism?
Yeah, I was actually kind of thinking about this a little bit today, because I was bound and determined not to pick the Saints with a winning record next year.
Yeah.
After the last 2 years, or picking them to win 10 or 11 games, I've just kind of gotten close to that, but not really. The vibes were terrible around that record. Yep. But I think the Kubiak hire and some of the names he's bringing in on his coaching staff, I think should inspire a little optimism, like a little spark a bit. We'll see what happens with how they handle this roster. I think they could have some tough PR sells if they have to move on from some of these players, or if they let Michael Thomas walk. Michael Thomas, for all the disappointments of the last couple of years and all the crazy social media stuff, is still very popular with a pretty big segment of the fan base. And we're talking about players who, like, 60% of the stadium is filled with their jerseys. And some of these guys might be on their way out. And they were cornerstone players of this big successful run, but like, I think they have to do some retooling of this roster, both from a talent standpoint and just from, like we talked about after the season, from a culture standpoint, and to get it where they want to be. So I don't know if it's like these moves are going to inspire a lot of confidence and optimism within the fan base, but I do think that the reset on the coaching staff and kind of taking this thing in a new direction should inspire a little bit. And we'll kind of see what happens and how they fill it out from there.
Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.